Boy. Okay. I'm going to talk about some events that occurred many years ago, 30 years. Until now, I've kept it private, silent about it, because I was afraid, terrified. I was afraid that people would think I was crazy. And here we go. I was going to school at Florida State in Tallahassee. I was younger, 20 years old. And I had some events which changed my life occur. I met someone who said to me that they had seen my face before we met in some dream or something, and I thought that was weird, but I didn't really pay any attention to it. I just, put it in the back of my mind. And a few days later, this same person said the same thing, and I thought, this is really weird, watch out, be careful of this person. But again, I just kind of, went about my business. I was in college, I was having fun, I was, being Marc. And about 2 weeks went by, and I was laying on the back deck of my townhouse that I had rented in Tallahassee, and it was in the woods. And there was this big, long wooden bench. And I was just laying flat on it, and I was looking at the sky, just relaxing, wasn't thinking about anything. Looking at the clouds, and the trees were swaying, and everything was peaceful. I felt really good. And all of a sudden, I saw a black, dark-looking object that was shaped like a bow tie that a man would wear, like with a tuxedo, in the sky. So, okay, we all look at the sky. I mean, you don't see anything like that ever. So I was laying flat on my back, and I was just looking at the sky. So when I saw this thing, I sat up, and I looked at it. And then I stood up, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking. I'm trying to figure out what this thing is. And I'm staring at it, and I'm thinking, what am I looking at? It's not an airplane. It's not is it a UFO? I don't know what it is. And I'm staring at it, and it moves across the sky. It's moving across the sky, and it gets to some clouds. And when it got to the clouds, it went behind the cloud, and I could see the cloud starting to cover it. So I understood something, like, I don't know what. And it went behind the clouds, and then it came out the clouds, and it went like in and out of some other clouds, and it drifted across the sky, and then eventually it disappeared. So I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, what the hell was that? I had never seen anything like it before. Sorry, I've never told this story before. And I'm dumbstruck. I'm dumbfounded. I'm trying to figure out what this was. I had no idea. So I go inside, and I put on the TV. I'm thinking maybe 1,000 people saw it. Maybe it's on the news. I don't know what. I flip through all the channels. I don't see anything. There was one channel that said something about a weather balloon 9 hours before in Gainesville, which was 3 hours away, and this thing wasn't any weather balloon. So I turn off the TV, and I'm standing there, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell this thing was, and I'm really confused, and I don't know what. So I look over, and my bookshelf is, a book is sticking out of my bookshelf, leaning forward like this. Tilted forward. If it would have gone any more, it would have fallen. It was on its edge. It would have fallen over. And all my other books were lined up straight, perfect, row after row, exactly straight, compulsively straight, which is kind of my personality that way. Everything has to be straight. So I walk over, and I grab the book, and I take it down, and I open it. And it happened to be the Torah, the Old Testament, the Bible, of all my books. So I stuck my thumb into an arbitrary page, I opened it up, and this is what I read at that moment. God further said, "This is the sign that I have set for the covenant between me and you and every living creature with you for all ages to come. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall serve as a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and every living creature among all flesh, so that the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures, all flesh that is on the earth. That God said to Noah shall be the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." So you can see I'm shaken up. I had just seen a bow in the sky. It's not something that anybody would ever see in the first place. Then I walk in, I open a book that's tilted forward and open it to that page and read that. How can that happen? So my mind started to do its rational mathematic thinking. I can't even stand. I have to sit down. I felt a rush go up my spine, the back of my neck, the hair stood up. I got a feeling like, whoa. And I started to think, how can that happen? How can that happen? How can you see something like that and read something like that? Okay, you can open a book. It could open to that page. You could read that. That could happen. But not having just seen a bow in the sky, I thought about it for a week. I thought about it for 2 weeks. It's been 30 years. I can't, that can't just happen. I got very emotional. I felt like it was a moment of contact. And I began to cry. I cried and cried for a long time. I was overwhelmed. I don't know how long I cried for, but it was a long time. That event marked the beginning of a period of time when I began to have repeat encounters, I would describe it as. They were varied in nature. They took different forms, formats. If any one of them would have been somehow explainable in my mind, okay? But when I stepped back and looked at the series of them together, it began to paint a bigger picture, and I began to get a feeling of confidence in what was happening. That I was experiencing some sort of definable, undefinable event. This type of these encounters and events, like I just described one, I would really like to stand here and describe some of the other ones so that you could get a bigger picture. But there's not going to be enough time today. You can go and look at I made YouTubes of them, and it's on my website, so if anybody's curious to hear a second or a third one of these described, they can. At this point in time, I was handed a handwritten manuscript to read that was unlike anything I'd ever read before. It was filled with wisdoms and lessons. It came into my hands from a person, handed it to me, but it was synchronistic, it seemed, because here I was having these unbelievable events that were mind-boggling, and lo and behold, in my hands is a book of lessons and wisdoms, ancient, handwritten, and it seemed to go together to me. I began to read these wisdoms and lessons and practice them, because one of the big lessons in the book was don't just read, but practice. And that makes sense because, I mean, you can read a book on becoming a master violin player and put it down, but that doesn't make you a master violin player because you read a book. If you don't practice the violin for years and years and years and put in the effort and the discipline and see the growth ensue and practice it, then you've just read a nice book, but you haven't changed at all. So I was reading and practicing these lessons, and also the Bibles of the world, the different religions, the teachers and sages and saints who've come before, whose lessons and life messages echo down to us. And I'm immersed in all of this. I was trying to understand what was going on, and this seemed to be historically where people have had experience, and I thought maybe I could, understand what was happening. And so I immersed myself in these studies in between these encounters that were occurring, which went on for approximately 2 years, and then stopped. The encounters and these lessons and this experience all put me on a journey. It was a journey of transformation. I began to see myself, feel myself transform. It was the most wonderful thing that I have ever experienced in my life. It was the most wonderful thing I can imagine anyone experiencing in the universe. And this is what I want to try to pass on to people. I feel personally, oftentimes, unworthy to say all this and bring all this. Maybe that's what took me 30 years. I don't know. I'm handing over the tools that I was given, but I didn't always practice them. I didn't always live as I was taught. But when I did, I felt right. I felt good. The sun shined brighter. I felt right in the world. I felt right in the universe. I felt right with myself. And I felt right with God. How all of this came to me is not important. I thought it was. I focused on it. I thought, that is important. But it was explained to me that that's not the message, and that people would focus on that and miss what I'm really saying and bringing, giving. The golden thread of what I'm trying to say is, if I can do this, anybody can do this. It takes work and practice. It's not, easy, but it's worth 10,000 lifetimes. I can write a book. I can speak, but the words are mine. I can't expect to have the same impact on people that God had on me. I was told that this was to help at the time. I was told that this was to help me personally, which I really didn't understand, but I trusted the source, and that's how this works. It helps one person at a time, and that as they transform, they become a living example, and that ripples through and positively affects other people, because we all interact with other people, and that's how that works. It's my hope that by reading my experiences, that you will experience transformation, and that this might mark the beginning of your great dance of love with God and the relationship that it's all about. And that your connection to that love and power will light your path as you proceed, and that you will see synchronicity in the messages and the signs that you receive every day. And that transformation will bring you joy, unspeakable joy. It's been the greatest love of my life. And that's what I want to pass on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marc.